Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. I will start off the bat here saying that I am getting this weird error message that I don't normally get on the back end of YouTube, so the stream might be a little choppy. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really know what's going on. I don't know if it's a problem on YouTube's end or on my end. It's because, it's not something that I normally get. But I am recording a separate stream, so at least the recorded version of what I have should be okay. So if I need to, I can fall to that backup. So I don't know if anybody's out there watching live right now. If it's any good, I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I'm just aware of this weird error message that I have at the moment. But like I said, if it is bad, I have a separate stream that's recording. So I can just post the recording to class afterwards, and you can watch it later. So if it is, my apologies up front. We'll figure out what we need to do to get that sorted. So today I have two main sort of things on my agenda as in terms of what I want to do for this stream. I want to talk a little bit about your group project, because I have determined what I want to do with the group, and so we'll talk a little bit about what we're gonna do with that group project. I'll show you some things just so you can kind of get the understanding of what's going on and all that sort of stuff, and then we'll do the demo that we're doing. So what I've done for the group project is I've essentially taken everybody and put them in one group. If we go to our final project, we can see in the text of the final project that there is a contingency plan for up to 5 people in a group. Right? We have person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4. And then here in this paragraph, it talks about having the option of a project manager for the group, and they'll be the one that manages the Git repository and all that kind of stuff. So these are the 5 base options. So we'll need one person to do the bootstrap stuff, one person to write the jQuery, one person to make the graphics, one person to do the analysis, and one person to be the project manager. So that's 5 people. And not 6 people. So where we would want that 6th person to be would be anywhere where they'd be a good fit. So we'd essentially just double up a role. The only role we can't really double up is project manager, right? Because there's only one Git repository, and there can really only be one person kind of in charge of the project. But in terms of everything else, you can have 2 people adding Bootstrap. You can have 2 people adding jQuery scripts. You can have 2 people adding graphics, or probably don't need 2 people doing an analysis. But if we need to, we can do that. One of the things that I encourage you to do, though, is as you're choosing these roles, is just to be kind of smart about these roles and kind of trying to make sure that people have a good fit in these different places. Right? Because, if you have somebody who, well, really, we have people who are, at all levels of kind of understanding what's going on behind the scenes with the code and stuff in this class. So we kind of want to make sure that people are hitting their comfort zones while still having somebody to fill every role, which is pretty critical. But I have provided you with your topic and your team information. And you can find all that if you go down to My Group. My Group, you'll have Team Alpha in here. You'll see something that looks a little bit like this. It's got all your names here. It's got some tools that you can use here. For example, if you want to use a discussion board to talk to one another, or you want to use these tasks or a wiki, or you want to send emails to your group members, all of that stuff is right here. Another option is to use Teams or some other sort of project management software. I leave that up to you all. I just provide you guys with this stuff. You can use Teams through the college to create a Teams chat and chat with one another back and forth that way. And you have your program of study client here. Oh, it looks like my stream straightened up, so I guess maybe maybe everything's good now. You also have your program of study client right here, which is the Welding Technology Diploma. That link there links to its page on the Cleveland Community College website. And essentially what you'd be doing is more or less making a page that would be similar to this, right? Because your final project asks for a lot of the things that are on this page, which is why I link it here. Like a description of the program. If we go here, this is your description of the program. You might want to reword that. You might want to cut some of that out. That's up to you all. It also asks for a list of the required courses for the program. Well, that's right here, right? So of the 6 requirements here, at least 2 of them can be directly pulled. Well, really 3 of them, because the name of the program as well. I'm giving you that off the bat. Right. Half of them, the content for that, can be pulled from the regular Cleveland Community College website. So there is that. So yeah, the next thing to do would be to do our first group check-in, which I think happens in... I want to say that happens in Module 2. Yep, there it is. Getting the team together. So I want to know who's kind of taking on all of these roles in the final project. So you'll need to select your project manager. You'll need to kind of determine the roles. That project manager will need to create the Git and add everybody to the Git as a collaborator. What I would also like, and I don't have it here, so I will add it. Because I think I separated these in the past, and now I'm doing it as one thing. Just because it's easier. What I would like for the group leader to do is to add a It's called Team Leader. Team Leader will add a roles dot, I'll put that in quotes, roles.txt file to the GitHub containing the name of the individual and their containing the name of each person in the group and their selected role. Good. There. That way we have one thing where I know everybody's roles. And so that'll be submitted along with Module 2, which we'll start looking at next week. So you've got a little bit of time, basically the rest of this module and next module, to kind of get everybody together, maybe get on an email thread, maybe get in a Teams chat, whatever you want to do. Determine what you're going to do. And get that GitHub set up, which will be easy peasy after we start talking about Git. But the module that we're in now is our HTML and CSS Refresh Bootcamp. And so if you're in other upper level web courses or other second year, in quotes, web courses, you're doing this several times, right? One of the things that I've implemented is having this HTML and CSS Refresh Bootcamp in all of my upper level web courses. The plan is just to change the assignment a little bit, right? So that way you go back and you remember, well, what did we do in Web 115 when we were learning markup and scripting? When we were learning that HTML and CSS? What did we do back then? And so this is just designed to just give you a little bit of a refresher into that. So when we start building websites, you have that baseline. Now, obviously, especially if you're in other classes, you'll be learning other techniques, more advanced techniques, things like responsive web design, and all sorts of stuff of that nature. And of course, as we progress through the site and you're making your module projects, you can use those advanced techniques in these sites. That's no issue. They don't have to be built using all the old school techniques. And in fact, I'd prefer you use the newer techniques. All of this stuff is just designed to give you more and more and more practice. Because at the end of the day, what makes you get better as a developer in general and as a web developer more specifically is just doing this stuff a lot. Just sitting down, making a bunch of websites, writing a bunch of things. And I've got some, we'll do another website. We're going to do another website here in just a few minutes that I'm going to demo some stuff to you on. And, yeah, we should have a good time, right? Have a good time. And we'll try to teach you some tips and tricks along the way, too, that are kind of outside of the scope of any class, right? Like there's just little tricks where it's just like, oh, hey, when you're doing this, you could do this as well. And like it's not something that you would necessarily teach somebody as a part of a module, as a part of like official education, but it is good to like know. Right, so you just kind of want to read back through the reference here, look back through everything. All this information is the same in all of the upper level web classes. In this class in particular, your bootcamp website build is the egg truck site, so a food truck site where you have to hit it with essentially all the basics. And so what we'll be doing today is we'll be hitting most of these things when we when we create that. Today we'll be making a website with a table, which is not one that I've done in my demo so far yet, which would probably be more relevant to your food menu here. So you'd be, but we'll basically cover all of this stuff in some capacity to where you can have an understanding what you'd need to do to build this baseline website. So with all that being said, you've got your group information now. I've told you what you need to do for your group stuff. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. And let's get into building this bootcamp website demo here. And so for our demo, what I would like to do is I would like to build a site that looks at your school schedule. Maybe not necessarily your school schedule, but somebody's schedule, right? Anybody's schedule. So I've got Visual Studio Code open here. Let me switch over to my full screen display here so we can see this just a little bit better. And I'll zoom in as we go through. I have a project folder already set up for this project. So I will open that folder by going to File and Open Folder. And I will navigate to that folder on my computer. And Web 140 Bootcamp. Select the folder. Yes, I trust these authors. I am the author. And so when we do this, we can see our folder over here in our drawer palette. And if I zoom into that, you can see that I already have a picture opened in there. Or I already have a picture placed in that folder. And so that picture is just a little simple picture. We're going to add this picture into our site. And again, as I've been doing with a lot of the other demos that we've done this week, I will be kind of doing this on the fly and just kind of going with the flow and doing things as we get to them. Like, I come into these with a baseline plan and then I just kind of make them. So with that in mind, let's remember the picture. Open, 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 open. There it is. When I code with someone watching, right, you got the shell in the pan, the egg itself somewhere in, caught in the stove grates, and the flames on an entirely different burner, right? So, we're destined for mistakes here. But there is that. But if we make mistakes, we'll fix them, right? That's part of the development process. So I'm going to create a new file here. I can do that. I can create a new file in this folder by going to my project folder here in that drawer menu, clicking on this new file, and I'm going to call it index.html. And so now I have a little index file. Now, one of the things that I don't use that much when I'm demonstrating stuff, but I should, because it is a wonderful feature of Visual Studio Code specifically, is to use the exclamation key shortcut. Because one of the things that we talk about in the module is the HTML skeleton. And, the HTML skeleton is essentially the bare bones that we need for our website to work. It's that doc type. It's those HTML tags. It's those head tags. It's those body tags. Right, and since we write that all the time, right, like I typically write it for you guys just so you can see it and get into a habit. But there's also the exclamation point shortcut, which is really nice. If I enter an exclamation point and use that emit abbreviation there and just hit enter, that happens. Right? It gives me my entire boilerplate for my HTML website with my HTML skeleton, including all the good meta information that we would want. Which is pretty great. We also have our title here, and we can go ahead and change that. This is going to, we're going to call this My School Schedule, and we're going to save. So just like that, we've got our HTML skeleton and all the good stuff into our index.html file. So now the thing for us to do would be to make a CSS file that we can write CSS in. I'm going to add a new file. I'm going to call it style.css. That does the work for me. Now I can switch back and forth between these two files here or here. It's all good. The only thing that I need to do now is link this CSS file into my HTML file. So above my closing head tag here, I'm going to add that link, which is link rel equals style sheet href equals style.css, and that is a self-closing tag, so we can do that. Now we have that set to go, right? And if we want to make sure that we linked that properly, I can switch over to my style sheet and just add something like body background green and save it. That way, when we visit our index.html site, we can see that our background is green. Now, another thing that you can do that I don't do as often to show you all, because I believe it's a plugin that I have installed in my Visual Studio Code. I believe it's an extension. But we have a lot of, there are a lot of extensions that you could use for this. There is an open with live server here. So I can have a live server. You can see that's on a port on localhost. And I can actually have this open as a window. So I can set my windows up like this and see the website that I'm building side by side with where I'm building it. And also, since it is a live server, I can do things like remove that code and save, and it does things automatically, which in general is something that you'd only do if you were coding in, like you'd only see something like that if you were working with React or something like that. That's pretty good. But we can see here that it says My School Schedule up in the tab at the top. That's because we put that in the title. So let's just set ourselves up some baseline framework for our website here. So let's make a header, let's make a main, let's make a footer, let's do all the shenanigans. Right, so we will include a header section. So we'll use our header semantic tag here. In some other examples I separated our header and our menu. This time I think I'm going to put the header inside, or the menu inside the header. So we'll add a menu here inside our header. And if you were in that other demonstration, we said we could use our menu like our UL tags for our unordered lists. Essentially what we end up with when we use a menu tag is an unordered list. It just looks like, it's semantically a menu to our browser. So we can put some links in here using list items. Since our menu tags act like a list, we can use list items and add links. So let's make a anchor tag here that allows us to go to hashtag. Since we're not actually going to a different website, we just want to link there. We don't want to actually link it to anything, so we'll just put a hash there and put the link text in there. We'll say home, right? And just for the interest of time, we'll take that, we'll copy it. We'll paste it a few times. Looks like I left out that greater or that less than symbol there at the beginning. We'll copy it. And we'll just add some other links. We'll add like classes. We'll add, I don't know, maybe you've got a blog on this. Who's to say? And a contact page. Let's go contact. So now we can save this, and if we zoom out, we see our links up here on the top. Right, they're styled as a list. They have that list bullet there. We'll need to style it in a little bit to make it look pretty, but for now we're just creating our baseline. Which is all well and good. Okay. So now that we're done with the header, we can move on to the body. Or we can move on to the main, rather. So we'll use this. We'll make a main container here. And remember, that is semantic to let our browser and any assistive technologies that are browsing the site know that this is the main part of the site. And on this main part of the site, we'll put a section tag. And this is where we'll put our image, a title, all sorts of stuff, right? So we'll put our image here, img src equals. We're using edpic.jpg there since it's in our folder. Our IDE pulls it up for us automatically. Since this is decorative, we'll add an empty alt tag for it. If we were using it for a purpose, we'd put the description in there. And this is a self-closer. I also want to do an H1 here. That is my school schedule. And so we'll just save that, see how that looks so far. Right, we got our image, we got our our information for our school schedule here. It's looking pretty good. And so now we can start building our table, and we'll build out a full table. We'll build it with maybe, I don't know, we'll build it with 3 or 4 rows here, and we'll build it with a header row and all that kind of fun stuff, just so we know what we're doing. Right, so let's start building that table. We'll keep on doing it right here in this section tag, and we'll build a table using our table tags. And let's start off by putting a caption. This will kind of give our table just some more information. Right, some context. That's what we use our caption for in a table. And let's just write fall 2021 schedule. And there we have it. Now we can start building out the table. Building out a table is really tedious. It's one of my least favorite things to do in markup. Most of the time, whenever I have to create a table, I will automate it using JavaScript, just because building a table, especially a big one, is tedious. But in this case, since we're not using JavaScript, we'll do it. We'll build it out. So let's create a T-head section to group our table header. Inside of that, we will put a row. And inside of that, we will put our TH tags. And a TH tag is for a specific particular cell in the table header. In the table body, we use TD tags for that. So this will be course name. We'll make another one for meeting days. Let's go full screen for a minute. We'll make another one for meeting times. And we'll make another one for instructor. And so that's our header row. Now what we would also want to do is we'd also want to add a scope attribute to each of these. So our TH, it's going to be call here since these are header labels for the column. We add a scope of call to each of these. And that will let Assistive Technologies and our browsers and all that kind of fun stuff know that these headers are for the things that come underneath them in the column. So good. Now we'll add our T-body. And that helps us define the body of our table. Each row gets TR tags for table row. And then each cell in our T-body gets a TD tag. So if you didn't understand why writing a good table is tedious, maybe now you do. Right, so let's just make up some courses here. Let's call this one Intro to Programming. That might meet Monday and Wednesday. From 1 o'clock p.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. And I'll teach that one. Why not? So that defines one of our rows. If we want to check to see and make sure that we're just doing everything right now, we can save and check out our live site here, and we can see it here. There's our caption. There's our header row. There's our body row that we've made so far. And you can see how they look different based on the different semantic tags that we've used. Right, so let's make 2 more rows here just so we have enough. So I'm just going to take this and copy it. From the TR to the TR. Hit enter there, so I'm still inside the T-body. Paste that, and then we'll do it again. Right, so this will be Intro to Networking. And this will be Intro to Security. These will meet on different days. Let's say this meets on Tuesday. And this meets on Thursday. And since they meet on these different days, they take longer to do. So we'll give them longer class periods. And this will be taught by my colleagues. Good. So now we have a semantically complete table. So if we save this, we already see it here, our table. Now remember, all we've done so far is just markup in HTML. We haven't added any CSS to it yet, so it doesn't look pretty yet. We'll have that shortly. One of the last things that we want to do is we want to add a little footer section. We'll do that down below this closing main tag. We'll add a little footer. And in this footer, we'll put a little copyright message. I'll put it in a span just to give us something to select. And we'll say, and copy my schedule 2021, whatever. All right, so now when we save that, we can see our little copyright message right there with the little copyright symbol. So now, as you probably notice, this does not look good. This is ugly. All right, so we need to do some work on this with our CSS to make it look better. And so the first thing that we'll want to do is we will want to kind of reset things. And we do that with our universal selector, our asterisk selector. And so on our asterisk selector, we'll reset our margin, margin 0. We'll reset our padding, padding 0. And we'll reset, or we'll just add our font family, sans serif. So it's just a generic sans serif font. And so what this does is it takes any margin that the browser might add by default or any padding that the browser might add by default, and it strips it out of all of our elements. And so we can see that in action if we go back and even just look at what we've got so far. Right? This is before we save. So this is what it looks like before we save this, and there's what it looks like after. You can see it got rid of that margin, just took it right up to the top of the screen there. That doesn't look nice, but this just resets everything, so now we're in control of everything that we want to do. All of our margin, all of our padding, we're in control of it now. Another thing that we might want to add here is our box sizing. Box-sizing, border box. That way we don't have to worry about box model quite as much, right? Like if you remember back from Web 1.15 when we were working with box model, we said that the content area plus the padding area plus the border area all add up to make the full width or the full height of the element. But if we use box sizing border box, then the width that you define or the height that you define also includes those other elements. So it gets a lot nicer. You're not having to do a bunch of math on the fly trying to make things look right. So we'll save. And so now we'll just kind of focus on this from top to bottom. Just do a few things here. I want this to be kind of like what we might see on the Cleveland Community College website. We'll use like those same colors and stuff. So let me just pull myself up a color palette here on another monitor just so we can refer to it. And we'll just use close approximations. We won't make it exact. Just so I'm not looking around everywhere for these colors. So in our header, let's just give ourselves a nice kind of dark blue. So we've got our header here at the top. We put that in header tags. We haven't put any classes or ID selectors on any of our HTML elements. I think I might want to do this using only... You know what? I'm not going to do... I was going to say I might want to do this only using element selectors, but I think you guys need to see them. So I'll add an ID selector to the header here. ID equals top, let's say. Now I can refer to that as hashtag top in my CSS. And write some rules for it. So we want it to be full width. It's going to be full width by default, right? So that's good. We'll want to set a height since we're kind of using what we learned from Web 115. We're going to be using static measurements here. But we'll talk, we'll just kind of do responsive elements as we go throughout the course, right? So we want to set a height on this. We'll set a nice, 360 pixel tall height. We'll add a background here, and we'll make that background a background color. We'll do something like, I don't know, HSL 230, comma, make it pretty saturated, 80%, comma, and then the lightness can be like 40%. Right, and that's a pretty good color. That's a pretty good blue. We can see that if we hover over that there. It's not quite what we would use on the college's site. Like, it's probably a little more desaturated. That's probably a little closer there. But it's good enough for our purposes. So let's save that. And we can see our header there. We're going to need to fix that, right? But we'll do that later. I want to add some more stuff to this because one of the things that I like to do is use borders and different things to kind of help us create other design elements. And so using borders and things also helps. So I'm going to add a double border to this. So I just wanted to kind of do a little double border to make it kind of interesting. And so we'll do that using a regular border bottom. And that will give us, a little bit of a separation. A little bit of a kind of a demarcation line here at the bottom. And so I want that to be more of the cyan type blue that you see in the CCC logo. So let's define a size here, like maybe, I don't know, 24 pixels, solid, and HSL, let's say maybe 200, 60%, and this will be lighter, so it'll be like 80%. That's too light. Let's make that just a little bit darker. Let's go down to 65%. We're just kind of shooting at colors here. That's pretty nice. So if we look at our site now, we have this nice border bottom as a demarcation line, but I'm not satisfied. I want another one. But you can't add more than one border bottom property to an element. But we have a little trick by using a box shadow. So I can use a box shadow here. Box dash shadow. We want 0 blur. 0, whatever else they call that thing, spread. Right? And there's another element there. That's another thing that we want 0 of. We don't want any of that. And let's make something that's relatively thin. Let's make it 6 pixels. And let's give it like that lime green color. So we'll make it HSL. Yeah, let's go like 100, comma, 60, comma, and that's 60% should be, comma, we'll do that same 65%, and let's just see how it looks. All right, so we can see it there. We have that little line there. We can see our picture is running into that right now, but we can adjust that, no worries. Right, so we can see that we have a little double border there. And we'd probably want just like a little more contrast on that. So let's just pick us a color here in our color picker. I think that served to do the opposite of what I wanted to do. Well, we'll just do something like that. And that'll give us a little more contrast. There we go. So now we got a little double border there. We'll also want to address that menu. And let's address the first thing that we'll want to do is we'll want to make sure that we are displaying that menu in a line across instead of straight up and down like that, right? So we'll set up our menu and we will say display. Or actually, we do that on the menu items, don't we? So for the time being, all we'll do in here is text, align, center. And list, style type, none. That way we'll get rid of those bullet points on those list items. And align our text in the middle there. Now on those menu list items, we'll say menu li. This is where we will display inline block. And so when we do that, we get them straight across. Our menu lia, those are those anchor tags, right? We're adding these compound selectors and we're getting more specific. So this is a link inside of a list item inside of the menu, right? It's that whole DOM thing. So we'll say color white. To make those white links. So that's a little close to the top. I might want to bring that down. So I would do that with our menu here. I know that my top section is 360 pixels tall. I don't want to go all the way down. So I'll write a padding top for about 300 pixels. And so now we see that brings us down to about where we want it to go. And I will add some left and right padding on those menu items so they get a little bit of space between them. So we'll use our shorthand for that. So that's 0 as the first number because that's 0 on the top and bottom. And let's give them like 24 pixels between themselves on the left and right. And so now we have that. And we have plenty of room here. We won't add a background image, but we have plenty of room to add a background image to this big header here if we wanted to. Right, that would probably be a good use of this space, would be to use a background image in our CSS for that. I don't have that prepped, so we won't do that. But, you know, it is what it is. So now let's go ahead and focus on this center section here, which is the picture, the title here, and our table. So what we will do, and we'll probably need to be able to full screen this, but the first thing that we'll do is we want that nice green second border there to show. So let's add a little 6 pixel margin to the top of our main. So we'll use our main element selector, margin, top, 6 pixels. And now we can see our green line all the way across because we took and we pushed that down 6 pixels. Right, which looks pretty good. Let's center our section. So that's section 0 auto. Section margin 0 auto. We're using our margin method to do this. Margin 0 auto. And we also have to give it a width, right? Or else it's just going to be full width by default. So width is going to be 960 pixels. There. So now that's centered. So you can kind of see some other stuff here. Like I might want to take this middle section and make it stand out as opposed to the background. So let's do that. Let's make our main background have a light gray color. Just a real light gray. Like we don't want a whole lot of contrast here at all. We'll make this background a really light gray, and we will make this section with our text just white. So main will be background something really light like EEE. And our section will be background white. So now we can see we have a light gray here. And we have our white section here. Let's give that section just a little bit of padding. Like maybe 12 pixels. Just to pull in all this stuff from the edge a little bit. Like that. I was trying to determine whether I wanted to center this picture or use like a float to have both the picture and the term my school schedule on the same line. Right, I think for the interest of time, I'm going to just center it. But you can't center an image on its own. You have to put it in some kind of container. So let's do that. In our HTML, we will find our image. Which is here. We'll wrap it in a non-semantic tag because we don't need semantics for this. We'll call it a div and we'll give it a class of center underscore img. And we'll wrap this image in this div. Save that. That way in CSS, we can take our, and this is a class, so it's dot, center underscore img. We'll set a width on it. I happen to know that the width of this image is 460 pixels. The height of this image is also 460 pixels. So we can just declare that like that. And we can use our margin technique, margin 0 auto, to center that up. There it is, nice and centered. Let's do the same thing with our H1. Let's take our H1 here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's add some margin to the top of it, right? Let's just use our H1 selector. I'm going to get a little faster here just so we are kind of moving a little bit. Right, so H1. We're gonna change the color. We're gonna make the color the dark blue that we've already picked. We are going to make the font size something that's bigger, like 48 pixels. And we are going to text. We're going to align that text to the center. Text align center. So now we have that nice and centered there. We need a little bit of breathing room between the picture and that title. So let's give it a little bit of margin top. Margin dash top. 36 pixels. There we go. A little bit of space. Now we can do the same thing for our table. We can take our table, use our table element selector, margin top that for 36 pixels. And this will be the only time I use a responsive selector here. So we'll give it a width of 100%. Because I'm not really sure why that is. Like, I'm sure there probably is something out there that explains that. But by default, right, our table is actually just constrained to the size of the content. So we actually have to make it 100% if we want it bigger. Right, and in this case, we actually want to use a calc function because we're going to want to subtract that 36, so we bring it in. So it would be calc 100% minus 36 pixels, and that's the only advanced, or, well, that didn't work. That's not what I wanted. Let's just make it the width of the center here, which is 960 pixels. Minus 72 pixels to account for both the left and right. There's box model rearing its ugly head again. And I think I need spaces there. Yeah, I can never remember if I need spaces there or don't. But it is. Yes, you need spaces there. So now we have that. Now we can focus that caption. We can make it a little bit bigger. Font size. We'll make it 24 pixels. It's aligned center by default. We might want to make that bold. Right, so we can add a font weight of bold there. And let's add a little margin bottom, or actually a little padding bottom, I think would be more appropriate here. Padding bottom, 12 pixels. Or let's do 24 pixels. There we go. Just move that down just a little bit. We might even want it a little more down there with 36 and save, and you can see it jump. All right, so we can take and we can focus that T head differently. So we can focus our T head element selector, make the background that dark blue again, make the font color white, give, then we might want to give our TH and our TR just a little bit of padding. So when we want to do multiple selectors at one time, we just separate them by commas. padding, 12 pixels. Oh, and I did TR instead of TD. That needs to be TD because I want that on all of those. Like that. Give them some nice room. And I think that looks pretty good. I think that's a solid situation here. So now the only thing that we have left to do is we can address this footer. So we'll focus our footer element here. We'll give it a background of, let's make it that green. And you know what? We can give it a border top of that dark blue just to do some wild stuff with it. We want it to be 100% by default, so we don't have to declare a width, but we do have to declare a height, which will make that height maybe 120 pixels. And we will text align center. And that does that. I don't have all of my... Made a little mistake there. I don't have all of my elements for my border top there. I need to give it a width. Like I need to say 6 pixels or whatever. And I need to tell it what kind of border to make, which is a solid border. So now we can have a border like that. And let's just give that a little top padding. So padding top to pull that my schedule there down just a little bit. We'll say 36 pixels. Boom. So there we have it, a really simple site that we built just utilizing our standard markup and CSS rules that we learned back in Web 1.15. So something like this is what is going to be expected of you for this bootcamp module that we're on right now. I will take this and I will host it in a GitHub so you can see this code, and I will post that code along with the recording after we're done here today. But that's all that I have for you for today. I'll hang out in the chat for just a couple minutes just to see if anybody with me has any questions. If you're watching the recording of this and you have questions, please send me an email. Please send me a Teams message. Whatever you'd like to do. But that's all that I have for you for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.